Conversation is going round. People talking about the colors come to town. Fresh as a summer breeze, she'll take you by surprise.
Hello and welcome to another fabulous episode of Fresh Waves. We have a great show lined up for you today. We'll be talking with cross-border shopping expert Keith Pitts, who's the author of Two Sides of 49 about cross-border shopping. But before we start, a big shout out and thank you to Reese's Market and Bakery for giving us these fabulous muffins that we have in the studio today and for supporting us for the last 10 years. They're at 5758 Main Street in Stouffville. And a shout out to Jason Rumball, our technical producer, man of the wizardry behind the board, and of course Ivan Harris, who does just about everything. There isn't a thing that Ivan Harris can't do. Superman himself. So let's get on with the show. Good morning, Keith Pitts.
Good morning, Brenda.
How are you doing today?
Absolutely fantastic, and thank you once again for inviting me back for, I think, which is our sixth year.
Our sixth year of cross-border
shopping. And
you know, it's fun. And last year, I have to tell you, there was a woman who called me to let me know that as soon as she finished listening to the show, she went charging down to Buffalo because she had to get a wedding gift.
Shuffling off to Buffalo.
Exactly. And she said she bought one of the items that you had highlighted as a door crasher and was thrilled, was absolutely thrilled. I think it was a $500 Canadian item, and she ended up going to Buffalo and getting the same item for about $180, and with the exchange, what's that, $190, $200?
Yeah, maybe $220 tops. But
which puts a couple $100 in her pocket.
Yeah, it sure is. A couple $100 goes a long way if you can keep that in your pocket up here.
Absolutely. So tell us about cross-border shopping, and I guess we'd better start at the beginning with that old NAFTA agreement. And
Absolutely.
NAFTA stands for people who don't know?
North American Free Trade Agreement, which has been in place now for about 16 to 18 years, which is an agreement that was signed between the United States, Mexico, and Canada for the movement and the trading in goods between the three countries.
Right. And
about a year and a half ago, President Trump in the U.S. said that he felt that NAFTA was unfair to the U.S. marketplace for certain items, specifically in the dairy and the eggs and things that are controlled by our marketing board, and proposed a new agreement, which is called the USMCA, or the United States, Mexico, and Canadian agreement. It's not a song by the Village People, even though it may sound like that. And basically, it was proposed. It was accepted by all three countries a year ago, November. However, the agreement has not been ratified. It has only been signed by one country and ratified by one country, and that's Mexico so far, the U.S. and Canada. So that means that we are all still operating under the NAFTA agreement and all of the restrictions and things that we can do. So same as we did last year, we're going to talk about how to, get items into the country under NAFTA. The biggest impact of NAFTA versus the USMCA when it comes to the average shopper is today we are allowed under NAFTA to bring in goods online that we can order from the U.S. and as long as those goods are not valued at more than $20, they can come in tax-free. Under the new agreement, that will raise that limit to $150. So as you can see, there's some de-incentive here in Canada to put that new agreement in place too quickly, because that's $130 of taxable revenue that the federal government can put onto goods coming across. And also the other biggest factor of that is the changes that will have to happen to our marketing boards in the dairy industry and the egg industry and the like that will drive those prices down finally, I think, in Canada, so that there's a more competitive market, and we as Canadian citizens can get better value for our dollar when we're buying what I consider essentials when you're looking at butter, eggs, milk, chicken, etc., and those type of things.
Wow. Well, I knew that it was quite controversial a year ago.
Yeah.
the NAFTA agreement and all the negotiations that were happening. And then all of a sudden for the election, it seemed like it was a non-issue.
Yeah.
I didn't hear NAFTA mentioned even once during the big debates and topics of interest. Obviously, they picked 3, and NAFTA didn't make the cut, although NAFTA does affect every single thing we
Everybody
do.
here. Yeah, everybody in Canada is affected by the NAFTA USMCA agreement. And as I say, there's some restrictions in there. And last I looked, there isn't even, it's not even on the books to go through reading of the House this year. So I don't know what's going to happen in 2020.
Wow.
But I think what will probably happen is that Mexico and the U.S. will push Canada to ratify the agreement, and again, we'll kind of sleep on it until we're pushed and told to do something. And everything in the election, as you know, was based on climate change and recycling and plastic straws and everything else, and nothing really on bringing the cost of goods down for Canadians, as we've been seeing complaints about now for the last 10 years.
Right. So will the new agreement help the average Canadian or hinder the average Canadian?
I believe it'll help the average Canadian. Yeah, now that will open up the online marketplace in the U.S. And the U.S. is huge when it comes to online sales. A lot of the bricks and mortar stores are closing down there, and they're going uniquely online. Amazon, of course, is one of the largest online retailers in the U.S. And, yes, we have Amazon Canada as well, but when you start comparing the prices between the two, it's like apples and oranges.
Right.
I think I related a story to the listeners last year about my daughter wanting a car seat for her newborn baby to put in the car. And this car seat was made by Durrell, which is a Montreal-based manufacturer. And the car seat was $549 on Amazon Canada, and it was $189 on Amazon US.
Wow.
So you take a look at that and being able to bring that product in, even with the exchange rate that we have today. You're talking $250, $260 compared to $560, and this is for an item that's made in Canada, which really burns me a little bit. That the
little bit.
Yeah,
I should hope it burns you a
well,
bit more.
with a lot of the Canadian items, I mean, we really do. They do what they call market-based pricing. And to cut through that says, what will the market bear, and how much will the dumb Canadians pay for this compared to the competitive market in the U.S. And that's why we see everything from Honda motor cars that are made in Alliston, Ontario, that cost us $6,000, $8,000, or $10,000 more as an Ontario resident to buy than it does someone in Buffalo, to, as I say, Durrell Manufacturing, to Tilly hats, to everything else. It's not just a matter of taking the currency and converting it to Canadian dollars. It's taking it, converting it, plus, that ends up really getting to us as Canadian consumers, and which was the impetus for me, writing the book and the blog on cross-border shopping to help Canadians save money and keep more of that money in their pockets.
Well, I just got back from Phoenix and Scottsdale. I can honestly say, walking through a store actually in Sedona and finding a Tilly hat, and I thought, hang on a second. This is the same price as at home. What's up with this? Maybe it's a knockoff. Actually, it was cheaper.
Yeah.
And I thought, maybe it's a knockoff. So I picked it up. I read the label. I didn't want a Tilly hat, but I'm reading the label. I'm making sure that it's the Made in Canada Tilly hat that you'd find at the Don Mills Center down here, at their head office or whatever. And it was unbelievable that I could buy a Canadian-made product in the States at a tourist mecca like Sedona for cheaper than I can get it right from their factory here. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's like saying I got a deal at Niagara Falls.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. Well, I mean, I'll relate a recent purchase to the listeners. I'm going away, as you know, next week. I'm off to beautiful Phoenix for the land of the sun for the winter time. And I need some new golf shoes to go down there with. So I was looking online at the online sites in the States, and one of the ones that I buy from is called Rock Bottom Golf. And they had some golf shoes on, some Adidas golf shoes, and they were reduced from $79 a pair to $39 a pair. and if you bought them, you got your second pair free. And that was with free shipping and free delivery as well. So I ended up getting 2 pairs of Adidas golf shoes for $39. So I happened to be down at the Bayview area and Bayview and Wellington, so I thought I'll stop into Golf Town and see what the shoes are there. They were on sale for $129 Canadian. On sale, reduced, and that was the bargain, reduced from $179 to $129. So that just shows you on one item the difference in pricing that you can get in purchasing that item and either picking it up in Buffalo, having it shipped to Buffalo, or even having it shipped back here.
That's crazy. Well, I tell you, I'll tell you a nice heartwarming story. When I was in Sedona, I went into a little boutique, found a jacket that I absolutely loved, and it was $200 US. And I said to her, I just can't afford this. She said, but it looks so good on you, and look at how the collar looks, and blah, blah, blah. She had all these things, and I said, you know what? I just can't afford it, because on top of this, I have to pay the exchange, the Canadian exchange rate. It's just too much.
Yeah.
She was the shop owner. She said, okay, I'll give this to you at this price in Canadian dollars. So automatically she's taking 38% right off the top?
Yeah, 32 to 35 right off the top.
And then she said, and I won't charge tax. She said, this price is it's marked up for tourists anyway. And, it does look better on you than I've seen it on other people, so I feel so bad if you can't buy it. Anyway, I ended up getting it for about $100 Canadian in the end. And I mean, that was just her being kind and knocking off her own profit and things like that. But in the same sense, you just realize how much things are knocked up. And I found it here, the same jacket. I went online, and here in Canada, in the Canadian dollars, it's $325.
Oh, I know. Well, as I say, my girl, I've got 2 girls as well that live off of DSW in the States and Coach and everything else, and they go in there and they tell me all the time, even bringing the 2 websites up side by side, the Canadian website and the U.S. website, and picking up a dress or an outfit or a coat that in the U.S. is $129 is always in the $350 to $400 Canadian price range for exactly the same.
So why is this? Why is this crazy price difference so prevalent? I mean, it's not like we're morons, and now with the internet, anyone can look this stuff up.
Well,
you just have to have the gumption to look it up.
You have to have the gumption. You have to know sometimes how to get on the websites. And, as I said, sometimes if you try to get on a U.S. website from a Canadian internet provider, whether you're with Bell or Rogers or something, it'll automatically keep flipping you over to the Canadian site. It recognizes where you are, where you're located, and says this is the site you're going to be on. And there's some tricks that you can do to be able to see the U.S. websites. There's a software program called a VPN that you can put on your computer or on your phone. And what a VPN allows you to do is to basically spoof your location. Right. So you can put a VPN on, and then it asks you, where would you like to be? And you say, I want to be in the U.S., and all of your browsing now is done looking like that, even though you're sitting in Stouffville, that you're sitting somewhere in the United States doing the browsing, which opens up all of those websites to you. So as I said, if you pull up the 2 side by side and just do comparative shopping, I don't care if that's Amazon.com versus CA, whether that's Coach, whether that's Banana Republic, virtually everyone, when you take that U.S. price and add that 35% to it or 40% to it, you're still going to be, in some cases, 100% cheaper than what that same item is going to cost you here in Canada.
Wow. And you can get this VPN for other countries as well, can't you?
Yes, yeah, they're free. I mean, if you just Google VPNs, there's a number of free ones available to you. Some you can pay for, but yeah, you can get that and go on, Chinese websites. You can go on UK websites, EU sites, whatever you want to do, and do that comparative shopping. And although we're talking a lot about, our biggest trading partner, U.S., and bringing products in from the U.S. into Canada, that's not to say that, deals can't be had outside of the country as well. And in a lot of situations, when you're ordering, from Amazon in the U.S. or from, Amazon in Canada, you're not looking at an item that's physically located in our country at that time.
Yes,
that
true.
Item can come from China, and it'll say not available for prime 2-day shipping, and that's because it's coming direct from China over to Canada.
Wow.
So why not shop directly in China to start with?
There you go. We're going to take a little break. When we come back, we'll continue this, and there's more tips to come. So do stay tuned. You'll want to hear these tips on cross-border shopping with Keith Pitts. I'm the host of Fresh Waves, Brenda Masson. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hi folks, Kim Mitchell here. You know, however you choose to get around, your ATV, your snowmobile, your boat, car, if you have a motorcycle, all these things take 100% of your attention and skill to operate safely. Alcohol impairs that, and bad things can happen. So, be smart, okay? You know what I'm going to say next.
This message brought to you from the Safe and Sober Awareness Committee.
We're back on Fresh Waves. I'm your host, Brenda Masson. This morning we're speaking with Keith Pitts about cross-border shopping. So we just told people how to get a VPN.
Right.
So that they can pretend, or the computer seems like it's coming from the U.S.
Correct.
Recently, I've heard a lot of people talking about buying directly from China. Would you need a Chinese VPN in order to get a good deal, or can you use a Canadian computer and still get a good deal?
Luckily enough, the main Chinese sites, predominantly Alibaba, which is a large Chinese site, is available
it
to.
Doesn't sound Chinese, does
I know
it?
it doesn't, but I know. Yeah, there's
Alibaba and the 40 Thieves.
Alibaba.com, and the other one is called AliExpress. And those are both direct Chinese sites that put you right into the Chinese manufacturers, and you can order goods directly from them, and they will ship them. And it's interesting. I'll talk a little bit about the shipping and how the Chinese do this. It'll also upset you a little bit because of the Canadian shipping that they do. So basically, what happens is with the Chinese sellers, they all pool their goods together. So they may get 1,000 orders a day or 2,000 orders a day that are coming to Canada, let's say. So what they will do is they will put all of those orders into a container, and they will ship that container to Halifax, Newfoundland, or whatever that is. Mm-hmm. And then the goods are taken out of the container, and Canadian stamps and postages are put on them, and they are now mailed to you through Canada Post. So when you take a look on the site and you wonder, like, how can I order this from China and the shipping charge is $1.95 or 79 cents or free shipping or whatever it is from that standpoint, that's how they do that. So every one of those retailers shares a portion of that 40-foot container to send their goods over. So where a container may cost, let's say hypothetically, $3,000 to ship a container from China, when you divide that between 1,000, 2,000, or 3,000 items that are on there, that becomes very cost effective for that most expensive leg of the shipping. And then what happens when they get to Halifax or one of the ports on the East Coast, or if it comes through the West Coast, they have special arrangements with the Canadian Postal Service that they get discounted rates based on the number of items that they're shipping. So I'll give you an example. So I bought some stuff a couple of months ago that came from China, and the shipping charge to me on a $20 item purchased in China was going to be 79 cents. Now,
wow.
I know that I can't send you in Stouffville a letter for 79 cents from my house in Keswick.
Wow.
It's impossible. So, so there I am as a Canadian citizen supporting this Crown Corporation. I can't send you a letter for the same price that a Chinese company can send me a $20 item from China to my door through the Canada Post system. So
that's crazy.
Just another way. As I say, it's when I talk about my books as well. It cost me $7 to send a book to anybody in Canada. And you've all been through this. You've all walked into the post office and said, "I'd like to mail this." Well, you think you're meeting with Mike Holmes when you want to put something through. Out comes the tape measures, out comes the scales, and they're measuring something, and it's 50 centimeters by 190 centimeters by this by 1.3 kilograms, and calculating it all to turn around and say, here's what it costs. Well, in the U.S., when we talk about shipping goods in from the U.S., it's flat rate. So they can go to any of the post offices in the U.S. and they can get a box, free, by the way. The box is free. And depending on the size of the item that they want to send, they can send that item literally from California to Boston, Massachusetts for a flat rate charge of, I think it starts at about $2.95, and the largest box goes up to about $20. Well, to send try sending something from Ontario to British Columbia in that size of a box, it's probably going to cost you $60 to $80.
Wow.
Yeah.
Again, the consumers get nailed, don't they?
Well,
in a way.
yeah, I guess it is, but we get nailed because of all of the back end charges as well. And you were, as you said, you were down in Arizona. You know what the cost is of things, and when you're buying stuff down there, and that's where we really get it here. The cost of running a bricks and mortar store in Canada is just absurd. When you talk about rents, when you talk about insurances, I'm not even going to talk about the cost of labor, because I think the cost of labor is almost a wash nowadays between the two countries. I mean, post-Trump's election, people down there are getting paid $14, $15 an hour again. So, so it's not like saying, well, yes, in the old days, well, our employees are getting $14 an hour and the poor person down in the States is making $7. That's gone. That's not happening anymore. But it's that cost of doing business. It's the cost of shipping something. In most cases, as I say, a product lands in Canada, it's got to go through a border and a customs warehousing. Then it's got to be stored somewhere in an interim. Then it's got to be shipped regionally to a warehouse, shipped somewhere else to another warehouse before it finally gets to the retailer. Well, every one of these places that touch that item have got to make 15 to 18% margin just to keep the door open.
Right.
So when you've got 5 people doing that before it shows up at the retailer shelf, it doesn't take long to see an item be raised in goods by 100 to 150% of the cost.
Okay, but then that would stand to reason that anything made here should be cheaper.
It should be, but then we talked before about what the market will bear.
Right.
Pricing in Canada.
They think Canadians are going to pay more.
Absolutely. I don't know if I relayed this to your listeners a year or so back, but I had a person in one of my talks, and she owned a dress shop. And, she said to me at one time, she said after the talk, she says, people will pay 10 to 15% more for an item that's made in Canada. So they see made in Canada and they go, there's value to that. I'm going to pay 10 or 15% more. Well, this was back when our dollar and the U.S. dollar was at equal price. So what was happening was that goods were coming in from the U.S., whether they were Chinese goods or Taiwanese or anything, they were still being imported from the U.S. And when they were coming and hitting on the shelves, they said, okay, this is what the price of the goods are. So we're going to price this dress at X amount of money. So I said, well, that sounds really good. So now, the Canadian-made goods are going to be better value because they're going to be cheaper than what the U.S. goods are. Mm-hmm. And she said, no, you didn't listen to me. People will pay 10 to 15% more for Canadian goods. So what that meant was that if I can get the U.S. goods in here, I'm going to raise the price of my Canadian goods to keep that delta in there and make more money on the Canadian manufactured items.
That's somewhat crazy.
It is somewhat crazy, but
it's the way it is.
That's the way it is. That's the free market.
That's something.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
The things we learn when you come on the show.
Well, and it's interesting because, people will say to me, well, you're not supporting Canadian retail and you're not doing this, and why are you buying outside the country? And the fact of the matter is about 85% of what we buy doesn't come from a Canadian source anyway.
Right.
It's imported, and the U.S. is our largest trading partner, so a lot of that is coming in from the U.S. to start with, mm-hmm. and then going through those 4 or 5, levels, as I say, at 15%, 15%, 15%. So what I talk about, when I talk about cross-border shopping, is really cutting out the middleman. Is to say, if you're going to buy these goods anyway, and like you said, the lady who bought the KitchenAid mixer, well, if that's what you're going to shop anyways, why have 5 levels of 15% added on, and then whatever it is at the retail level, when you can cut all of that out, go down to Buffalo, buy exactly the same item for that $300, $250 less. So you really are, if you put your mindset on, you say, I'm going to be the importer. I'm not going to go to somebody else
Right.
who is importing these goods for me and going through all these machinations to get to this point. I want to be the importer. I want to drive down there. I want to declare it when I cross the border. I want to pay. I have no problem in paying the Canadian border people, their HST, and I say that to everybody all the time. If you're going to go down shopping for a day or 2 days or whatever you are, declare everything. The last thing you want to do is get flagged. And if you're even if you're declaring it, you're still going to end up saving 30, 40, 50% on that item that you would have bought here in the Canadian marketplace. And it was a U.S. or a Chinese item to start with anyway.
Wow. Well, we're going to take a little break while we can. When we come back, we're going to talk about going and doing some Christmas shopping in Buffalo, but just going for the day. Not having to go and spend a weekend. You can just go for a day.
Just for the day.
And you can still come out ahead of the game.
Absolutely.
Without ripping off Canadian retailers.
Absolutely.
There you go. We'll be right back. You're listening to Fresh Waves. I'm your host, Brenda Masson, and this morning we're speaking with Keith Pitts. Do stay tuned. This will save you money.